Yo, Kpaceguy here, what's going on to you? Welcome back to the channel, and today I want to talk to you guys about why calibration is so important, and that goes for home theater and music. Anything that involves speakers being inside a room, it is important to kind of dive into calibration, whether that's your automatic calibration in your system that you're using now, or your manual EQ, things like going into ARC Genesis like we're in right now, or getting things like a mini DSP or Dirac Live and going in and making changes. Here is why it's important. Now, I'm using Anthem Room Correction. This is their ARC software they have in their receivers and preprocessors and some of their subwoofers as well. And I'm actually using this because I'm going to make a comparison video. I've been using the mini DSP 2x4 HD for about a week, trying to get myself acclimated with that in Room EQ Wizard, also known as REW. I've been playing with these both because I'm going to make a video comparing the two. Reason being is because I feel that they're very much close to each other. I don't think that the mini DSP is that much better than room correction from Anthem, but we'll get into that in a later video. I will also do a dedicated video on the mini DSP itself coming up very soon. So we are in room correction right now, and I just freshly ran calibration because I just changed around the room a little bit. I added 2 new speakers to the system, and I reduced one sub and changed the other 2 around. So I ran calibration because I changed the system a little bit. So this is a fresh new file I just did. What I'm going to do is click on Curve Viewer. This is going to show you for every speaker what Anthem tried to do and what it achieved. So I can't really fine tune these lines. I can only use what's on the left side of the screen here to show you what I want to show you. But let's look at the key down below, bottom left corner. We have this purplish brown color here, corrected curve with base management. Red is the combined measurement with level adjustment. We have a target curve, and then we have the combined measurement with both adjustment and base management. So I'm going to reduce this down. I'm going to leave the target curve here. I'm going to take off this and this. So this black line here is your target curve. This is what Anthem is trying to shoot for with this. This is the front left speaker. I can change it from speaker to speaker if I want to, but we're going to use the front left speaker as our demonstration. Now this is the curve in which Anthem wants to create based off of kind of how I have my system set up. It wants to be fairly flat, kind of a boost around that mid-range bass, and then I have a crossover set at 50. That's why it falls off so quickly, but my crossover point is set at 50 so that everything else starts to be sent to the sub. Now, my KEF R11s are very much capable of getting into the low 30s with pretty good output, but I have subs for that, right? So I have it crossed over at 50. That's why this line drops off. Otherwise, it stays relatively flat, and I do have a curve at the end of the frequency to keep the high frequencies at a minimum, not being fatiguing, piercing, whatever the case is. So this is the curve that Anthem is going for. Now, if I go down to the unaltered measurement, this is how my left speaker measured in my room before calibration has been applied. Now, let's see what we see here. We have a lot of valleys, peaks, there's a little bit of them, but the goal is I have my calibration set to 75 dB. That is reference level. So about here is reference level. Right through the middle is reference level. So you can see what kind of dips above, what kind of dips below. A lot of this actually is really good towards the tail end of the frequency. It's pretty, relatively flat. We're within maybe 1 or 2 dB of each other, and then it starts to taper off, of course. Now, look at this here. This is a pretty deep valley. This is a pretty steep hill. Or peak, I will call it. So the goal is to level this out. So Anthem wants to take these peaks and these valleys and make them a lot more smooth. Not so much variation between volume versus frequencies. If you look on the graph here, this is the x-axis, you have your levels, 40, 50, 60, 70. These are your dB levels. On the bottom, on the y-axis, is your frequency response, 15 hertz up to 20,000 kilohertz. So this is what the graph is telling you. It's telling you, hey, you have a little bit of a dip here around that 52, maybe 51 hertz, 60 hertz range, and it's about, it's about your reading, but look at the peak that comes right after that. So this is what the graph tells you is what frequencies are being, I guess, amplified in my room and what frequencies are kind of flat, kind of null in our system, and we're gonna fix that. So let's go over to, let's say combine with level adjustment. You can see what it wanted to do was get my speakers levels adjusted to the rest of the system. And it also did bass management here. So let's get rid of this and rid of this. This is my combined measurement with level adjustment and bass management here. So this grayish kind of purplish line here, this is what Anthem came up with after everything was said and done with the system. This is so much smoother. Look at this red line again. Look where we started at, where things were just all over the place. And trust me, you can hear that imbalance of sound when you're watching movies, or especially listening to music is when it's more prevalent. Anthem went back and said, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna keep your crossover here, we're gonna cut it off there, and we're gonna make this a lot smoother. Anthem knows, and you should too, that you don't wanna boost anything if you don't have to. You want to lower things. So if you have a really high peak and a really low null, you don't wanna boost the null to reach the peak. You want to bring the peak down to reach the null and get your flat response that way. So you guys can see here that Anthem with bass management and with level management managed to lower this peak to meet some of these nulls here. Now you see it did boost it a little bit. Couple dB doesn't hurt anything. And same thing here, but it didn't boost this peak to meet this or beat this null to reach this peak. It flattened this out. So now we have a much smoother response, more aligned with that black line, the target curve. So it made that sound and that left speaker sound so much better. So if I put all these together, this is what Anthem decided to come up with based off of the information we were getting during calibration. So I'm going to switch over to the center channel just for laughs and giggles. Or let me see if I can get to the subwoofer. Let's do subwoofer number 1 here. Let's turn off this and this and this. So this is my Rythmik subwoofer, and this is placed in between my center channel and my front right speaker. And you can see my target curve. I actually don't have any type of drop off set for this sub. It's playing 12 hertz all the way up to 120 hertz is how I have it set in the system, because it is capable of playing almost 10 hertz with some pretty good authority. So I have it set to do so. We're going to use what I paid for. Now this is how it measured here. Now we're not too bad in between the 15 to 50 range. Not too bad, not too much of a variation, but you see as we get over 15 through 180, whatever, we have a crazy drop off of sound between 50 and 100. It falls off a cliff. Now a lot of that is due to the crossover nature. We have my front speakers playing bass. We don't want a lot of it necessarily, but this is a drastic drop off. We're above 80 dBs at 50 hertz, and we're under 70 dBs, almost 65 dBs around that 80, 90, 100 hertz. It's a steep drop off, and you can hear that. You may have a lot of low end, but the mid bass coming from the sub is almost non-existent in comparison to the rest of the system. So again, we have the black line. This is our target curve. This is what Anthem wants to try to do based off of the crossover point and the things that I have set for it to do. This is its goal. So if I choose show the combine, let's do this one. Let's turn this one off. Let's turn on the bass management correction. Here's that purplish gray line again. This is what Anthem has figured out for me. Now, we don't have as big of a drop off. Of course, it's still one here, but look at the difference. We've brought back probably 10 or more dB of sound around that 50 to 100 hertz region that we were losing very quickly. We no longer have this peak either. It has definitely smoothed out. And of course, my crossover set to 120. So just after this line here, it's going to roll off because of the crossover, because my speakers are well capable of handling that information. So the subwoofer is crossed over at 120. But this is a much more beautiful response in compared to the red line. So if I show you all these other graphs that it did, it took all this into equation and then made me this curve. So that's what management is all about, is taking your speaker, seeing the poor information it has. Every speaker has its best and its worst graph. So your correction, what it's going to do is listen to how the speaker is interacting with your room based off of where you have your microphone, and it's going to make it sound smoother or its best foot forward into doing this. This is why calibration is so important. So I can go back and look at this for all my speakers. Now I have the ability to adjust these settings here. So I can go into Anthem root control and set my crossovers. If I wanted to send the bass to the subwoofer or not. How do I want my high frequencies to roll off? Do I want a bright sound or not? I can go and change the maximum room correction. So maybe I don't want room correction above 500 hertz. This is the house curve that I have set. I have it to stop at 500. That's why on the graph, it doesn't go past 500 hertz as far as correction goes. I can change that right here and save it to my preprocessor, and I can do that for every speaker that I have set up in my system, which is 11 speakers in total and then 2 subs. So room correction is by far a very important thing to utilize. If you're not going to go in depth like this, at least run auto calibration. I can't tell you how many people have receivers who never set up their mic in their positions. You owe it to yourself, no matter how much money you spend, little or a lot. Put your microphone inside your seating position and run calibration, because it should sound better than right out of the box not doing it at all. So that's going to be it for this video. I will be doing a video on the mini DHP and showing you some of the things that you can do with it, as well as a comparison or maybe a head-to-head battle between Anthem room control and the DSP. I don't have any way to show Dirac live or anything like that, but Anthem and Dirac and some of these other high-end tools are very similar in capabilities. So when I speak for the Anthem, I'm probably speaking for a lot of other calibration systems. So I'll do a video on the DSP itself coming shortly, and then I'll do a video comparing the DSP to the Arc Genesis software we're looking at right now, and if it's worth getting a DSP if you have something like mine at your leisure. So thank you guys so much for watching. Leave me a comment down below and tell me, what room correction are you using? Are you just using what's built into your receiver? If you are, what is it? If you have ventured outside of it like DSP, what is your thoughts on that? How is that going for you? Let me know all these things in the comment section down below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you are not already, and we will see you in the next video. Kpaceguy out. Peace.